Okay, I think we're recording now. I didn't hear the little message, but
No, I didn't either.
it
Oh,
says it's recording, so
okay, there we go.
yeah. All right,
This is
well,
good.
let's see. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see you today. People are still filtering in, but that's all right. So welcome to our first post-secondary transition talks of the season. 'Tis the season, right? Now it starts. And so we're actually this year going to have a prevailing theme of supporting post-secondary transition coordinators and specialists. And the content is going to be based on Mary Morningstar's book, Your Complete Guide to Transition Planning Services. And before each session, we're going to send out the chapter of the book that we're focusing on. We're not doing every chapter, and so that you have a chance to read it in advance. And so I guess we'll go to the next slide. Before we get started, we would like for you to sign in. There's a USBE sign in, and then if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to try to develop a different way of doing this in the future, also putting your information in the chat. So you can click on the link to sign in for USBE and also put your information in the chat. And
Deanna, I just put the link in the chat
yes,
to the Qualtrics.
Thank you. So we'll keep that link in there so that we can continue moving forward, I guess. Go to the next slide. The link to the sign in is in the chat. Thank you for taking that extra step for us today. We want to make sure everybody gets their Midas credit. So first of all, my name is Deanna Taylor. I'm one of the post-secondary transition specialists, and I'll let Lavinia and Crystal introduce themselves.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces and names, which is great, and some new ones. So my name is Lavinia Grippentrog. I'm also one of the post-secondary transition specialists here at the State Board. Been here in about 8.5 years, and I'll pass it over to Crystal.
Excellent. Thank you. I am Crystal Emery. I am the third transition specialist, post-secondary transition specialist here at the State Board of Education. I also support our state systemic improvement plan, which focuses around post-secondary transition for students with disabilities. I've been here at the state for about 4 years, and I'm excited to be here.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're just going to get started. We're going to start by talking about what the ultimate role of secondary transition coordinators or specialists. We're going to use mostly coordinators, but we're also referring to specialists for students with disabilities. And that ultimate role is to provide the critical leadership that's necessary to promote successful post-school outcomes for youth with disabilities and to help the students develop a cohesive view of who they are and what their future roles are. And so as we continue through today's session, we want you to consider how this role supports the process to prepare students with disabilities for adult life. So we'll go on to the next slide. And today, like I said before, we're focusing on the first chapter in the book by Mary Morningstar that I sent out to everybody that had registered at the time that I sent it out, and I can send it out after this to those that didn't get it. This chapter, is titled "I'm Responsible for Transition. Now what do I do?" And some of you may have been thinking that for a number of years now. So hopefully this will help be a support to you. But this chapter provides a comprehensive overview of post-secondary transition planning and services for students with disabilities, and mainly focusing on the roles of post-secondary transition coordinators and secondary special educators. So we'll go on to the next slide. So we're going to address what the importance of post-secondary transition planning, just to kind of re-emphasize, what this is. And so we're going to start off by talking about the IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which we know mandates transition planning and services for students with disabilities. So the IDEA has mandated transition planning and services for 25 years. And the legislation aims to facilitate students' transition to post-secondary settings, specifically in the areas of employment, education, and independent living. And there must be a coordinated approach for post-school success. Many educators lack that training in transition planning, leading to poor post-school outcomes for students. Even with a dedicated coordinator, special education teachers are responsible for planning and delivering transition services. I meant to say even without a dedicated coordinator, those special educators are responsible for this. They're still responsible for carrying those out. And they are also responsible for transition planning of the students on their caseload. That's a lot of work. Students with disabilities are still less prepared for adulthood than their peers without disabilities. So secondary special education teachers often report feeling unprepared to plan and deliver effective transition services. I'm not sure how many of you feel that way or have ever felt that way, but I know I did for quite a while before I really learned more about secondary transition. And the lack of specific transition competencies among teachers leads to less effective service implementation and poorer student outcomes. Effective transition programs are crucial for student success in education, employment, and independent living after they leave school. And special educators, as we know, face numerous pressures and wear many hats, including supporting access to the general education curriculum, meeting IEP compliance, handling increased administrative tasks, to name a few. Despite these pressures of all of those things, transition services are still critical. That's what the entire IEP is about, post-secondary transition. And effective programs in post-secondary transition are crucial for our student success in post-secondary education, employment, and independent living. So we'll go on to the next slide. So there's two key roles, personnel roles, and they are, one is at the student level and the other one's at the system level, coordination and with as regards to teacher training and collaboration, and that's secondary special educators and transition coordinators. So the secondary special educators role involves things like focusing on individual skill development and IEP transition planning. They're responsible for the individual student IEP transition planning and instruction. They teach specific skills to transition outcomes like self-determination and career development, providing accommodations for students, focus primarily on classroom instruction and student level planning. And basically the secondary special education teachers are most comfortable with the role of the transition planning itself, that portion of the process. Whereas the transition coordinator's role involves things like ensuring that the system level coordinated transition activities across the school and community are carried out. They coordinate transition services, not necessarily direct student services. Having said that, I know I was served both of these roles in my situation. I'm sure many of you here are also in that situation. So it's kind of a double whammy. They inform teachers and transition information and methods. They act as a liaison between students, parents, administrators, and community agencies. And they support student development, planning, interagency collaboration. And technically, a transition coordinator's role does require advanced knowledge and skills that are required to carry out that role in its true fashion. And so the importance of transition coordinators are really critical in improving transition planning and services for students with disabilities. And they ensure effective transition planning by secondary special educators. They work on system level issues, and they're instrumental in improving post-school outcomes through all of the tasks that they do to carry out that role and support teachers in transition planning. So we'll go on to the next slide. I think Crystal,
Wow,
you're up.
that's a lot.
Yep.
That's a lot.
is a lot.
So because it's a lot, we all need some resources. And the Council for Exceptional Children in 2015 didn't develop it in 2015. They published in 2015 their post-secondary transition coordinator standards. So a set of standards that have seven advanced preparation standards for a transition coordinator or specialist that outlines the knowledge and skills that a transition coordinator or specialist would need to fulfill that role effectively and really support positive student outcomes. Based on the CEC standards, we at USBE have developed a set of knowledge and skills based on those standards and the needs of a post-secondary transition specialist that were outlined in the Mary Morningstar book as well. And so we've been working really hard on creating a resource to support transition specialists here in the state in knowing what skills and knowledge do you need to do your role and what supports do you need to do your role in an effective way. Next slide. So looking at the CEC standards, sorry, I have to look at my notes too. Oh, I lost them. There are 7 key program indicators, and they align with different pieces of the transition plan, but also the role of the coordinator or specialist. So transition assessment is an ongoing process and is crucial to identifying the student's strengths, preferences, interests, and needs. And the assessment results then inform the goals that we set around post-secondary planning for our students. And so this process is really critical and foundational to the rest of the work. Next, we talk about transition planning. That includes measurable post-secondary goals, really focusing on what does the student want their goals to be for when they leave school. And then aligning those goals and services to the needs of the student, but also to IDEA compliance with the law. We have to address education and training and employment and independent living as needed. And all of this plan should be student-centered and student-driven. Really, the goals of the student should drive the plan. And so the secondary special educator's job is to implement the plan. And coordinators typically are working with educators to ensure quality, to provide technical assistance and support to help with that transition planning. So as Deanna was saying, you have the student level, which is the educator, and then the coordinator is that systems level, really supporting the educator in doing the work. Third is family involvement. This is a really critical role. We know from research that family involvement and family expectations are a predictor of post-school success for students with disabilities. And so it's important that we're engaging the families in a way that is meaningful to the students' vision for themselves, but also in a way that will help promote the students in achieving those goals. And so the coordinator's role is to create resources, trainings, teacher and supports around that. And then the teacher's role then is to implement. Indicator 4 is student involvement. This really is where our self-determination and self-advocacy comes into play. We want our students to be self-determined and able to advocate for their needs and goals. And this is where the programs that we offer, the services that we offer, really should teach decision-making, goal-setting, problem-solving, all of those types of self-advocacy and self-determination skills. And students should have the opportunity to make real-life choices. And so as a transition coordinator or specialist, the role is to identify curricula or resources to help with this. And then again, the teachers are implementing. Indicator 5, curriculum and instruction. This is academics, life skills, the meat of the instruction for students with disabilities or students in general. And so it's important that students have transition-related knowledge and skills that we know are predictors of post-school success. We want to make sure that they have opportunities to be included in general education. We want to support them in balancing academics and transition-specific needs and content. Making sure that we're connecting them with vocational courses as well as vocational agencies to support their work-based learning needs. And so the coordinator's role around curriculum and instruction is to develop programs to help create the resources and then support the teachers in implementing that instruction. Indicator 6 is interagency collaboration. This is also crucial for post-school success. This is where we really hone in on the fact that this is a team effort. This is not something that the special education teacher can or should be, the transition process is not something the special education teacher can or should be tackling on their own. We really need to make sure that we're bringing in other supports and agencies that will provide critical services and supports for our students. And so this involves referring, bringing in outside agencies to IEPs, consulting, all of those kinds of things. And transition coordinators are responsible for establishing some of those communication efforts and some of those relationships for coordination with the external agencies, and then facilitating the involvement of those agencies with the special education teachers in IEPs. And then the last one, systems level infrastructure. This is really the idea of program support or data management. Effective transition services require us to think at a systems level. This is not just student level work, because if the system itself doesn't support what we're doing, then the student isn't going to have what they need. So really looking for transition coordinators who can provide these roles at the systems level to support the educators at the student level. So hiring transition coordinators can significantly enhance program effectiveness, because you have somebody in each role supporting each other, and it's not just one person trying to do all the work. And transition coordinators and school community officials often are the ones leading these systems level efforts. And our special education teachers, frankly, don't have a lot of time to come out and make these community connections. And so by bringing somebody in to support the systems level work, then our educators are freed up to do the student level work. And this systems level thinking includes things like data and addressing inclusion issues and some of the other indicators like dropout and graduation rates. All of those are those systems level pieces that can often be really challenging for educators at the student level. Next
Crystal,
slide.
can I add something
Yes,
with that
please.
last point? I kind of feel like maybe this should be another one, but I know it's not because this is from CEC, but like advocacy too, right? So like you sort of are the liaison between like building admin or district admin to advocate for whatever the case may be, like around the systems level, like if there are barriers for students with disabilities to have access to things, or opportunities, programs, skills, needs, I guess, that are not currently happening in your setting, then I think, you are kind of the person that says, you need to be at the table, I think, with lots of conversations going on at school and district level.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so it's important to note too that all of the indicators that we just discussed and the transition plan itself is really based in some solid research around transition planning. We know that there is a significant relationship between the post-school outcomes of a student and the quality of their transition plan. And we know that compliance is the lowest bar for quality. And we really need to be able to go beyond compliance to have the robust level of transition plans that will bring about the outcomes that we're seeking. And with that, in partnership with that, we also have in our research base, we know that there are at least 23 things that work to support our students with disabilities. These in-school predictors of post-school success are those practices that have the potential to have an impact on post-school outcomes for students. Next slide. So when we say predictors of post-school success, what we mean is an in-school experience. It could be a program, could be skill development opportunities or activities that help prepare students for further education, employment, and independent living after high school. So the things that are happening in school that are helping to prepare them for life after high school. And like I said, we have a list of 23 predictors. You can go to the next slide. That we know are correlated with better post-school outcomes for students with disabilities. We have the Padlet, I think is what this links to the Padlet. No, I don't remember exactly. This links to just the
might go to the
document.
one pager.
Yeah, that's right. So this link goes to a one pager that's on our website, the USBE website, under transition and graduation for students with disabilities. Thank you, Deanna. And it lists the 23 predictors and what they are predictors of. So education, employment, or independent living, and then definitions for each of the predictors. So if you want to know exactly what we mean by these, you can access this document. But the ones that are highlighted in yellow, these are the ones that we often call the biggest bang for the buck. These are ones that are predictors of multiple areas, like of the 3 areas, and also that have the strongest level of research supporting them. So career and technical education pathways, being part of a pathway in career and technical education, not just taking classes, but a series of classes in a particular area, is one of the strongest predictors of post-school success for employment and education, further education after leaving school. We know that spending time in the general education curriculum, not just elective classes, but the actual gen ed curriculum, is another predictor of post-school success. Goal setting, students who have the opportunity for autonomy, decision-making, self-advocacy, and setting goals, all of those are very strong predictors. Paid employment and work experiences is one that we've known for a long time. If students have paid employment during high school, they are way more likely to have paid employment after high school. And then parent expectations, and we always add educator expectations to this. The research is around parent expectations, but the people that are closest to the student, if they have high expectations for that student is more likely to meet those high expectations. And then the last one that is biggest bang for your buck is the program of study, how we develop the classes that the student is going to take and the supports that they need. Again, it's that robust transition planning. The more robust, the better outcomes. And next slide, I think that's you, Lavinia.
Yeah, I think it is. And I just kind of wanted to say one more thing. So many of you that have been with us for a long time are probably like, you guys are still talking about the predictors. So we're going to be talking about the predictors forever. But it's really like our mission and our goal to like make sure that everyone knows this, right? Not just special educators, not just transition coordinators, but everyone in buildings and outside of buildings and parents. And because I think a lot of folks can see that they're providing some of these things for students, right? Whether that be a gen ed teacher or an outside agency or a family member. So, kudos to folks that are doing these things for students and with students. But so I think in some ways it's probably, nice for them to know that, but also just as a piece around, education of we do kind of know what correlates to positive post-school outcomes, but we need to get it out to all stakeholders. So bear with us, but we have, tools and we really encourage you to share those with teams and everyone you come into contact with.
As a transition coordinator or specialist,
Yes.
This is one of the key pieces of support we want you to be providing.
In fact, it's so important that we have an entire Padlet just for that. I think it's like our 45th Padlet. But yes, that's that QR code and that link goes to the Padlet that has just additional resources. There's the self-assessment, so you can take this tool and ask your team, how are we doing on the predictors? Are these things happening in our setting? And so there's lots of things on that Padlet. I'm not going to go to that Padlet at the moment because today we're really going to focus on another new tool that we put together, and we want your input on this as well. So I think we're going to go there next, and I might have to stop sharing. But first, I'll talk a little bit about it. So in an effort to really help support our statewide transition coordinators in LEAs and transition specialists like yourselves, is we put together essentially a technical assistant document that I'll go through in a minute. But essentially the purpose for that was, one, to let the field know essentially the importance of having a transition coordinator or a specialist in an LEA. And I'm not so sure that sometimes special ed directors really understand all of those important roles and how it can really help their their programs and ultimately their students have better outcomes. So we sort of have outlined the rationale behind having a transition coordinator and specialist and what that looks like. And then sort of a checklist as to what are those activities that a transition coordinator specialist should be involved in. So we're going to go there next, and I'm just going to do a walkthrough of this document and show you where it is housed. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. My computer is a little slow today, so bear with me. Trying to get my screen back here. Okay, there we go. All right, I'm going to reshare. All right, and I'm going to go for a minute to where this document is. So can everyone see my screen yet? No? I thought I hit the share button. Okay, there we go. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I know there's a bit of a delay. I apologize. Okay, so hopefully you're all familiar with our USBE transition and graduation webpage. It really is available for educators. It's not like our big website that is for parents, and right, this is really for professionals. So this website, if this web page, if you go to guidelines, you'll notice that the very first document here is called Roles and Responsibilities for Post-Secondary Transition Coordinators for Students with Disabilities in a Local Education Agency guide. So it's a really long title. But that's the document we're talking about today, and that we'll be kind of working in today. I'm going to try to make this bigger. So here it is, and I don't want to make folks dizzy, but I do want to just do a quick walkthrough. There is a table of contents, but I'm going to skip over that and try not to go too fast. So I don't want to make folks dizzy. An introduction as to why this technical assistance document was created, and that it really is for local education agencies to understand the importance and how to implement evidence-based practices for transition services. So it kind of is in a bit of a question format. So what is a post-secondary transition coordinator for students with disabilities? So it answers that question of, what is this role and what does that look like? And then why is it important? So if a special ed director, let's say, or an admin person doesn't really fully understand what a coordinator should be doing or the value of an LEA having a coordinator or specialist, we've explained that here. And then the way that we set this up, and we're going to get to kind of this checklist in just a minute, but I want to talk a little bit about how it's organized, is around what we call the taxonomy for transition. And that's a framework of 5 different areas that are really important in comprehensive transition programming and planning. So is there anyone that has not heard of and you can put it in the chat, I can't see the chat, but I'm curious if it's very new to you, this idea of the taxonomy? And it may be, and that's fine, because we have linked it, but I'm curious of those that know about it and those that do not, because it is a really nice framework, I think, to be familiar with if you are in that role. And so these blue links here, they will actually go to another Padlet, which then really dives into examples of what do we mean when we say student-focused planning? What do we mean when we talk about student development? What are those activities that fall under each one of those categories in the taxonomy? And then to move on, the program structures, family engagement, interagency collaboration. So there's a lot of crossover with the list that Crystal just went through, right? Which was the CEC indicators. I would say almost all of them are there. Maybe they're worded slightly differently. So that's essentially the framework that this checklist that we developed is organized and structured. And we took those CEC indicators, and also the checklist that's in chapter 1 of the book that hopefully you receive, and if not, you will receive it. And we kind of put it into language that we thought would make sense. We did use a lot of acronyms, but the acronyms are explained at the bottom. So for the first area of the taxonomy, student-focused planning, for example, this is a checklist. And what we hope folks will do in LEAs is look at this checklist if you have this role currently, or if you are not in this role, that you might, as a practitioner educator, might say, like, is this happening? Do I have this kind of support in my LEA? So if you are not in a specialist coordinator role, that's okay. I think the checklist is still really relevant for you to go through and kind of identify, like, what is currently happening in my LEA? Do I have these supports from someone that has that role? So we will in a minute go through this like on our own, because we would really like you today to go through this and actually check this. So you can download it from our USBE website, or you can go to the Padlet link and download it there. It is a fillable PDF, but you can only check these boxes. So, oh, actually, it is allowing me to check it without downloading it. I know when you go to the Padlet, I believe you have to download it before you can actually go in and check the boxes. So essentially what we would like you to do is check the activities that you are currently doing and think about what practices you might start implementing. So you're checking those that you feel pretty confident that you are doing this currently in your role. And then I guess leave those blank of the ones that you're not, or make a side note. Maybe you're working on this, or it's, you're in process. So let me just kind of talk about a little bit of these acronyms, right? Because for the sake of trying to not have this document be super long, we used acronyms. So the first one under student focused planning is train teachers to write post-secondary transition PLAFUPs. I think we all know what PLAFUPs are, present levels of academic and functional performance, and align the post-secondary transition assessment data to the student's post-secondary transition plan. So if you as the coordinator or specialist are involved in training teachers on how to take that rich transition assessment data and write a PLAFUP on the student's transition plan, and you're actively doing that and helping teachers, you would, for example, check that box, I'm doing that. If not, maybe you're starting to do that a little bit, or you're not doing it at all, then don't check it. Let's go through a couple more. Train teachers to develop compliant and high quality post-secondary transition plans and monitor post-secondary plans to ensure compliance. So what level are you involved in direct teacher training around not just the compliance piece, but also quality? I know in large districts, sometimes you have separate compliance folks, but maybe you're doing that in conjunction with your compliance folks. That's fine. So again, check that box if that's something you are currently doing and feel like you have enough training and skills around being able to do that well. I'll do a couple more. Support teachers to know about and use evidence-based strategies for student involvement in IEPs. So you would check that box if you are providing resources and training to teachers around how students can drive their own IEP. Maybe you're using our app that we have at the state. Maybe you're using something that you have in your LEA, right? There's many different tools out there to get our students actively involved in their transition plans. So it's really not about using the right tool, right? But it's about the training and maybe even tracking how many students or teachers are actually having students really drive and participate meaningfully with some prior teaching for those transition IEPs. I'm going to pause for a minute. Should we go ahead and let folks access this and then go through the rest of the checklist? I don't know what's on the next slide because I'm not able to see it. So if you guys want to help me out, if that's what kind of our next thing on the
Yes,
slides. And
the next slide is our reflection activity.
Okay, so let me just switch gears then, and let me go to the slideshow. Okay, yes. So this was just the example. The link is in the chat to access the tool or the checklist that we're going to be working with right now. And then this is really what we want you to, think about as you're filling it out. Think about your own strengths and areas for growth from this checklist. You can go ahead and fill it out, make notes on the side, and then consider how this is or is not happening in your LEA. So if you don't have that transition coordinator specialist role, that's okay. I think you can still go through this list and identify what is currently happening, where those supports, whether they're in place or whether there's room for growth. All right, so I think we decided we were going to take 10 minutes. So we'll go until about 3:15 and let you all go through the checklist and fill it out, make some notes, and then we're going to come back together and share out. And please, if you have questions, if I wasn't clear, put them in the chat or just unmute. I think we're a small enough group, you can do that.
Yeah, now do you want to pause the recording while we're waiting?
Well, I think then with the time that we have left, we would love to have just an open discussion about this. I appreciate the folks that have already put some things in the chat. I'll just go ahead and read one person's if that's okay. This is Kim from Vista, which I believe that's one of the post-high programs at Davis School District. Does a good job at a lot of this. I've been at this location for at least 6 years as a teacher and have learned so much about this process. Prior to that, I was in the high school setting as a teacher and knew very little about the process. And so I think that more information would be beneficial for junior highs and high schools and even elementary. Yes, 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 yes to all of that, right? Because we know that we can't start transition too early, but certainly this happens a lot. This was sort of my experience too. I taught post-high and was a transition specialist in a relatively small district. And so a lot of this was happening at the post-high setting, right? But in the grand scheme of things, that's a pretty small percentage of our students that go on to post-high, right? Most students should be getting their transition services and in the high school setting and middle school setting. And so that often gets missed a little bit because transition is kind of thought of as this thing that happens in post-high. So I get that. So thank you for that comment, Kim. Sounds like you guys have a lot of great things going on, but there's a need elsewhere. So anyone else, and please feel free to turn your cameras on and unmute. This really is just an open discussion of, your own response to the checklist and what's happening in your setting.
So Lavinia,
Yeah.
if I could, put another plug for Vista, I'm just kidding. One thing that we've really placed a concerted effort on this year is connecting with outside agencies and connecting our families with outside agencies. And one of the barriers that we kind of identified is that it's a little bit intimidating for parents to reach out and make that initial contact. So we actually have like our a representative from Voc Rehab and a representative from DSPD come and have a day at our school and just have open appointments. So the parents can make an appointment here at the school to meet with those outside agencies and connect with them. And that seems to be really working. Like they run out of appointment times because parents are so excited that we're kind of bridging that gap between the school system and those adult agencies. So I think that's something that we do really well here.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. Instead of just handing them a pamphlet and having them navigate that themselves, they're familiar with their school. They trust you as a comfortable place. That's a great strategy. Thanks for sharing, Sonia. Okay, someone else says, Christina from Box Elder, I have found that there are a lot more students coming to our post-high getting regular diplomas and alternate, I think you meant to say alternate right now, alternative diplomas. This has been happening over the last 5 years. So do you think that is because they're not getting maybe the transition services that they maybe should be in high school? So they're coming to your post-high program where in the past that wasn't the case?
Because the stress has been more on that the students are getting those diplomas. So students that in the past that I wouldn't have seen getting diplomas, they would have gotten all certificates of completion. I'm seeing them getting diplomas, which I think is really excellent.
Mhm. Great. And Christina, remind me again, because I know that you teach post-high, but do you also wear the transition coordinator's hat for the entire district, or is there someone else that shares that responsibility with you?
I share, so I'm the team lead over our transition team, so kind of.
Wear the two hats, don't you? Right? Yeah. Yes. Which is difficult. I know what that's like. I sort of did that same thing, and that happens often, I think, in smaller districts where it's not a dedicated position. I would say advocate for that if you are able, right? Because we definitely, I think all of you are saying that there is a need. All right, I'm trying to catch up with the chat here, and like I said, if folks want to unmute, I would love for folks to, verbally state some of this, so I don't have to read it. All right, but somebody's microphone doesn't work. So Stacy said, but she wanted to say that this checklist is super helpful. Okay, great. Thanks for the feedback. I've been in SPED for 20+ years, but this is my first year in post-secondary. Okay, great. Well, that's our intent, right? Is that this checklist be helpful, and that's something that maybe you can have a discussion with the SPED director or an admin folks in your district to say, hey, like these are the activities that we should be doing. Should I go on and read the others, or is there anyone that would like to unmute? And I'll get to the others, but just wanted to see if anyone wants to chat so I don't have to read and talk as much.
I can talk about mine.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to second what was already said. The outside agencies, we've tapped into them a lot the last few years, and they're such a great resource. Like they can help the kid get a driver's license and do all the little things and get, I don't know, like the job placement resources that they have, and even like post-high, like once a student gets a diploma, I kind of have to step back, and the outside agencies have done a ton for us where it's like, now they're in college. Oh, and we got them a scholarship. Oh, and now they're living independent. Like all these really cool things that I'm like, yes, thank you, thank you. So I don't know. Great
Great. So
reason.
sounds like you've had a lot of good success with collaborating with outside agencies to provide some of those. We always say like transition isn't a solo event, right? Like we need to bring our partners in. We can't be expected to do it all. And Jalissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're kind of wearing two hats too, right? Like you're the SPED director as well as the transition person coordinator.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm still catching up on the chat. If anyone else wants to unmute, I'd love that.
So this is TC Zitting from American Preparatory Academy. So I feel like something that we do a lot really well actually is our family collaboration and trying to put the students, have them driving the force and everything like that. But one of the things that I'm still trying to learn a lot more is that outside agency. So I'd love to learn more about how to collaborate more with those outside agencies. We're starting to, but I feel like there's just a lot of room for growth with that.
Yes, absolutely. And we definitely have resources for that. I don't know if you're familiar with our brand new website that we put together last year. We launched it about a year ago, then it went through a recent redesign, but it is transitionelevated.org. Maybe one of my colleagues can put that in the chat. That is a great place to start because it really kind of identifies all of our agencies here in Utah. And of course, you might have others locally. But it's a great place to start. So thanks for sharing, TC.
I would love to hear more from Brandy about her CTE comment. It's in the chat if she would be willing. Looks like she unmuted, but we can't hear you, Brandy, if you're talking.
She might be having issues maybe with her mic. Yeah. I'm also curious, I don't remember what LEA Brandy is from, like if it's a large LEA or not. And maybe it's further up in the chat when we did introductions.
Severe. She's from Severe.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Okay, so one of our rural areas. Wow.
Oh, small and severe, she says. Excellent. Thank you, Brandy.
Small
but
and
I
severe.
appreciate you bringing. appreciate you bringing CTE up. I think it's a really great way to collaborate within the school and support our students. No worries about the mic. And so I just appreciated seeing that in the chat, and thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, just a couple of other quick comments, and then I want to leave time, our last 5 minutes, for you guys to do a quick little survey. Let's see, Jessica from Iron County said that she thinks that they do a great job with outside agencies. I think you guys have a pretty long history of working with outside agencies, but would like to move to transition planning into middle school, right? And this is a big emphasis across the country and also in our state. And many of you might have been part of Deanna's focus groups last year, and she put out a survey. And this year there's going to be a community of practice specifically around what does transition look like in middle school? Why is it so important to start? And what are some of those activities and what will they look like? And so, Dan, I don't know if you want to put in any information on the flyer around that. We did push out a lot of things. I sent it, if you're on my coordinators list, we sent out flyers for that middle school community of practice. So hopefully you all got it. Let us know if you didn't.
I will post the flyer in the chat.
Okay, great. And it looks like Brandy just added, it's nice because the CT Center is connected to our high school and students must maintain a 2.5 GPA in order to get into those classes. So it's a little incentive. Okay, I can see how that can be a good incentive, but we also want to be careful that that's not like a barrier for our students with disabilities. There's nothing in our rules that say students have to have certain grade point averages to get in. That could be an LEA type of thing, but we just want to sort of be like mindful of that too, right? But that is awesome that you have a CTE center, and I think those are going to be growing, like the Catalyst centers that we have in our state. The biggest one being in Davis. There's a whole new bill around Catalyst centers, so I think we're going to see more of those popping up in districts. Well, we really, really appreciate your feedback. If you have any more comments, please go ahead and continue to put them in the chat. But in the sake of time, we have a very quick follow-up survey so that we can have a little bit of feedback. So if you would please take a moment to fill that out, that would be great. And anything else, Crystal or Deanna, that you want to make announcements about?
Someone asked about the recording. It will be posted on the Padlet as soon as we get it processed. It might take a couple weeks but it will be posted.
Great.